The Arizona Corporation Commission offers the first official step in forming a business in Arizona. You, the entrepreneur, are the most important step to inspire your dream. It is my pleasure to interview today a very good friend of mine, 10 years plus, Mr. Joe Polish. Joe, how are you?
I'm awesome. Super great to be here with you.
Now, if somebody were to ask me, what does Joe do? I have to take a moment and think about how I'm going to answer that, because you do a lot of things. You're in an elevator. You've got one or two floors. Somebody says, Joe, what do you do?
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
I build a better entrepreneur.
Oh, I love it. Now, let me tell you a story that you might not know. So I was talking to somebody, I want to say from the East Coast, that owned a carpet cleaning business. And somehow it came up in the conversation, and I just said, yeah, I have a friend of mine, Joe Polish, and the look on their face. And they said, you know Joe Polish? Yeah, Joe's a very good friend of mine. And then they said, Joe is the guru of our industry. Was that your first business?
Well, my first real business was running a carpet and upholstery cleaning business, and so from 1990 to 1992, those were the struggle years. That's why I was living off credit cards. I went in about $30,000 in debt. I was working so hard. I wasn't making any money. I was hating life. I didn't know what to do. I did a good job cleaning, but I didn't know how to get clients, and so I learned marketing because I needed to eat. I needed to survive, and then I got really interested in the fact that you can use words to actually influence people to do business with you or not.
To make sure that our audience understands exactly, and if it's possible to describe in this short video, everything that you do, I'm going to say it because you're a very modest person. Multiple books. You have a movie that you've recently done about addiction. That's an award-winning documentary.
Yeah.
You are considered a master at marketing, and people come for your advice all the time for marketing. And I was watching a Tony Robbins video recently. I don't even tell you about this. And you're in the video. They're talking with him, and so you're working with people at a very high level to improve the lives of individuals, of entrepreneurs. You're at the height of your game, you're in flow, but there was a time when you were in a very difficult place. You didn't start with the silver spoon, and let's hear the story about how you became the person you are today.
Well, you know, I turned 50 years old this year, and it's even surprising that there was a time in my life that it's amazing I'm even still alive, because I became a very bad drug addict early on. So to kind of go back to the early stages, because, you know, when people ask what do, I have one hand that's like helping entrepreneurs market and build their companies, and the other, my passion project, is to change the global conversation about how people view and treat addicts with compassion instead of judgment, and to find the best forms of treatment that have efficacy and share those with the world. So that's what I'm doing through Genius Recovery and Artists for Addicts.
If it wasn't for art, I would be dead. And it got me thinking, you know, why not go to the exact people that seem to struggle and suffer the most from this, and have them be the ones that help create art as a force for good.
I think that there are people that don't have hope, that are very discouraged and frustrated, and you said, winners find a way to win, losers find a way to lose.
Yeah.
And in your own life, you were able to jump.
Yeah.
And you professionally help people to make that jump. So addressing the viewer,
how does one do that? Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I wish I could say there's like 2 steps or there's 5 steps or whatever. It is, you literally have to be willing to destroy anything in your life that's not excellent. I even have an art piece on the wall in this room that says that. And so there comes a point in time where, you know, your desire to live and thrive and survive is greater than the self-destruction, because when you're in a bad place, you have a whole environment that is probably supporting that. In the beginning, when you don't have confidence, when you don't have, per se, skills, or you feel completely down and out, or you feel everything's lost, and you're going to have to muster whatever level of courage that you can find within yourself, because doing things with courage never feels good. Confidence feels good. You know what you're doing. You know, you might be on top of the world. You feel confident. courage, though, doesn't feel good.
That means there's fear there.
Absolutely. But there's no such thing as fear without excitement, and there's no such thing as excitement without fear. Now, that could be used in a positive way or in a negative way.
Tell me about reading, because in pulling yourself up, I don't see any other way except now I've got friends that are dyslexic. I have friends that have a very hard time reading. They listen to Audible.
Yeah. And I listen to a lot of audio too, and I obviously have podcasts where I've, millions of downloads of my podcasts are out there, so I listen to a lot of audio. So the thing with reading, though, see, a lot of people ask, who was that mentor? Who was that one person? And honestly, I can't really think of who that person was. Where I found most of my inspiration early on, even when I was a drug addict, is through reading. I would read books, and so I would learn through other people's words. And here's the thing, I've read over 1,000 books. School's never out for the pro, and even after you get out of, high school or maybe college, then the real education of life starts. So we create our own schools. Everyone that is a reader is not a leader, but I don't know any leaders that are not readers. I just don't. And so every person I've ever met that has accomplished something great in life is a reader. And they may not read by physically reading. Like you mentioned, you could be listening to audios. It's literally constantly learning and educating yourself.
I think it was Aristotle Onassis who said if I had to make one purchase, it would be a tuxedo. And although we live in a very different life these days,
right,
what he really was trying to say was you got to network.
Exactly.
Through.
Yeah.
So how has networking helped you to get where you are today? And for somebody that's at the beginning of trying to get an idea into a business, get a business into a success, how do they network their way into that?
The number one question I get is, how do you meet all these famous people? Because people somehow get fascinated by, successful entrepreneurs.
How do you meet all these famous people?
Well, it's like the way you meet a lot of people. You go into it being a giver, not a taker. If you want long sustaining relationships, if you want to be in the relationship business versus the transaction business, you go into things being genuinely helpful.
If you walk up to them, maybe you don't start the conversation by asking for something.
Oh, right. And if someone says to me, hey, let's talk because we can make a lot of money together, I probably will never have a conversation with that person, because it's like, do you even have done any research on what's important to me? So when it comes to networking, part of it is, don't expect anything to be given to you without creating value first. Money earned ethically is a byproduct of value creation. So when I go out and connect with someone, I'm always thinking of how can I add value to their life.
Can I say what you just said again? Because you said it so quickly and I think it's so good.
Yeah.
You said it's a product of creating value.
Yeah, money earned ethically is a byproduct of value creation.
Go into that a little bit. What do you mean?
Okay, well, someone says value, what does that actually mean? Well, value means different things for different people. Like we have all these art pieces.
Where'd these come from?
Okay, this is a company called Gaping Void, gapingvoid.com.
Is this part of the Artists for Addicts?
They're actually doing stuff with me for Artists for Addicts, where we're actually going to create specific pieces just for recovery, because we're using art as a force for good. This right here is actually a culture wall. And so there's many things up here, such as resourcefulness, don't react, respond. If you want to get ahead in life, I started doing yoga when I was in one of the most grief-stricken areas of my life. I'd had a breakup. I was just emotionally distraught. I was not functioning well, and I was just, ruminating on this relationship that was really good and became really bad. And I was just in a bad place. And I hired a yoga instructor to do a private yoga session with me. She said to me, if you do yoga 3 times a week, it'll change your body. If you do it every day, it'll change your life. And I'd heard that before, but I thought to myself, I wonder if I actually did yoga every day, if it would actually change my life. And so I made a commitment. I'm going to do yoga every day for 31 days straight, for a month. And and so I did, and not like 10 minutes on YouTube, but literally a 1 hour to an hour and 15-minute class, that I would either go to a studio, and I travel a lot, so I'm a busy guy. Fitting an hour of yoga into my life every day was not easy, but I said, I'm going to just figure out how to do it. And after a month, I'll tell you, it shifted the stress. And so over a 90-day period, I did yoga between 82 or 83 days out of that 90-day period, and it completely shifted just a little bit the space between me reacting to life versus responding to life. So to go back to your question, I was going to point out one other people's bad news is your good news. So when it comes to creating value, almost all the money that is made in the world is not out of good news. It's actually, as
You're fixing somebody's problem.
Exactly. So for instance, if you break your ankle, that's bad news. But if you can go to a doctor, that's good news because the doctor can fix it and can probably make some money from doing that. If you're hungry, bad news. If you have a restaurant or a grocery store, good news. If you're bored, bad news. If you can go to a movie, if you go to a comedy club, good news. So how do you transform other people's bad news into good news? So to ask, how do you network? Everyone out there has some area of their life that's screwed up. They have some pain. I'm always on the lookout on how to transform someone's pain into joy, how to take their bad news and turn it into good news.
Well, I have 4 kids and they're so different. And there's a different path for each one of them.
Right.
But we have had to figure out, well, what's their path?
Yeah.
And everybody's got an individual path. I mean, the last thing you ever want to do is try to force another path on you. You got to find your own path.
No, you do have to find your own path. And see, one thing now, look, I speak from ignorance. I don't have children. One thing I do believe, though, is you don't want to handicap your children by making their lives too easy, by thinking you're just going to take all the pain away from them. But at the same time, you could really mess your kids up by trying to layer your value system on them and expecting them to think, see, feel, desire the same things that you do. So there comes a point where we have to let go. Happiness, I believe, comes from developing your own value system by producing values, not by consuming them. If you want to be happy, you have to do things that generate happiness. If you want to make more money, you have to do things that generate money. If you want more energy, you have to eat in a certain way, sleep. Think of yourself as a $1 million racehorse. If you're a $1 million racehorse, the racehorse will win races if the horse gets proper exercise, nutrition, rest, has the
input equals output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't shove fast food down its throat. You wouldn't have this $1 million racehorse smoking a pack of cigarettes every day, drinking a bunch of booze, watching pornography. You would literally take care of this horse. What's the difference? You're the $1 million racehorse. Everyone that's watching this is, what is your track that you're running on? Are you running the right race? See, some people are running really hard, but they're not running the right race. What's the right race for you? So happiness, I actually think, comes from what do you put your attention on and how do you take care of that $1 million racehorse?
Let's call this halftime.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned and how do you describe success and happiness?
Well, here's the thing about success. I have learned that if you try to, true happiness comes from producing values, not by consuming other people's values.
So an entrepreneur is going to come up to you and ask you for a piece of advice. What do you give them?
Marketing is the oxygen that makes everything in your business work. Think of selling as influence. And think of marketing as storytelling. And if you tell a better story, if you frame what you're doing in a better way, you're going to get more enrollment. So the reason, if you have an organism, a human gasping for air, it's because they're not getting enough oxygen. If you have a business gasping for cash flow, gasping for customers, the oxygen is the marketing. So you need to go and tell your story. You need to actually learn how to convey what it is you're doing and how you're doing it. I wish I could give the 5-minute, here's how you do it. I have a podcast. Most of the stuff that I put out into the world is free.
And where does someone find your podcast?
Well, if they go to joepolish.com, it links to all my different podcasts. So like nail polish, shoe polish, Joe, J-O-E, polish, spelled like Polish. But it's Polish, Polish.com.
You gave me a successful interview today. Special thanks to my guest today, Joe Polish. Create your business entity by filing with us to create a corporation, nonprofit, or LLC. Visit ecorp.azcc.gov to learn more.